Now the room seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
And I listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Indeed, you are people who listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Welcome back for another episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. My name is Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. And we're here. We're back again, yet again, to chop it up, chew it up, and talk about a particular issue in West Indies cricket. So many things to talk about, but today's episode, we're going to talk about the recently announced West Indies Women's T20 World Cup squad. By now, you know how we do on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, unless this is your first ever listen to a Caribbean Cricket Podcast episode of any sort. It's important that we cover all aspects of the game in the region, whether that be the girls, the boys, the women's, the men's, whatever it might be. And in the same way how we would give super focus on the men's T20 World Cup, which we did in 2022 and 2021. It's the same way we rally round the West Indies women as they are nearly essentially might as well be a week away. It's about a week and a half away from the start of their T20 World Cup campaign. If you're new to Caribbean Cricket Podcast, by all means, go and listen back to our archive episodes, recent episodes, whether that be on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, Amazon, etc. Or if you're watching this on YouTube and you're a YouTube person, go and listen to our previous YouTube episodes because we've spoken quite a bit over the last few weeks about both the under-19 women's team as well as the senior women's team. And I think I did a recent video looking at our prospects and chances for the upcoming World Cup. Disclaimer, or spoiler, I don't think they're very good. But that notwithstanding, like I say, the squad has been named. And before I get into it and name it very quickly, you should be able to see the ticker tape at the bottom. You can follow the Caribbean Cricket Podcast at Carib Cricket on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook. Just type in Caribbean Cricket Podcast. We're on the road to 5K YouTube subscribers, so help us along the way. Like, share, subscribe to this video. If you're listening to this episode on the podcast feed of your choice, please leave a review. All of those things help grow the podcast and all the algorithms and so on and so forth. If you'd like to support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast and become a patron for as little as $2, £2, £2, £2, $2 Jamaican dollars, whatever your currency might be, head to www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket, and you can become a patron of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast as well. And last and by no means least, the Caribbean Cricket Podcast International Test Cap is, well, I was about to say it's going to be worn by our West Indies women. It's not going to be worn by our West Indies women, although technically the West Indies team should probably be sponsored free of charge by the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Look at our snazzy maroon caps, people. If you'd like one, there's only 13 left. They've been selling like hotcakes. So if you'd like one of our let me get a picture. Yeah, if you'd like one of our Caribbean Cricket Podcast maroon international caps, by all means hit us up. DM me, Twitter, Instagram at Carib Cricket, and I'll let you know about them. £18 for patrons, £23 for non-patrons. That includes shipping. That includes postage and packaging. There's no extra costs unless it's going abroad, in which case I have to kind of just look at what the costs are involved for the particular country it's going to. But get at me if you're interested. Anyways, let's get into it, people. Let's chop it up. Let's get into the topic. Let's break it all down. Let's get the squad on the screen. So the West Indies women's squad has been named, and the squad is as follows. Get your pen and your paper if you need it. Captain, Hayley Matthews. Vice Captain, Shemaine Campbell. And then the remainder of the squad, Aaliyah Elaine, Shamila Connell, Afi Fletcher, Shabika Gajnabi, Chanel Henry, Trishan Holder, Zaida James, depending on what you want to say, Janaba Joseph, Chadine Nation, Karishma Ramarak, Shakira Selman, Stafanie Taylor, and Rashada Williams. Those are your 15 women chosen to try and bring the World Cup home for the West Indies in the T20 World Cup. I smile because I'll like I say, it's a very, very unlikely, but we back Hayley Matthews, we back the squad all the same, and we rally around the West Indies now and forever, you know? So what's the key takeaway from this squad? Well, that's ultimately what this episode is about. First things first, we have to look at who's not in it. Okay, obviously Deandra's retired, but who's not in it that was in the recent tri-series against South Africa and India? Because that's the first real big talking point. We recently played 2 matches against South Africa, 2 matches against India, lost them all. We've only won one of our last 14 T20 matches, which have comprised T20s against South Africa, India, England, and New Zealand. We have only won one of those last 14 T20 matches. So you can definitely say that we are not in anywhere near the upper echelons of the teams in women's T20 cricket. So what's changed? Sorry. So the squad that played against South Africa, the names that have been dropped from that tri-series squad, which is quite controversial in my eyes, because literally this tri-series just happened. On the surface of it, the team that was selected for the World Cup should have come primarily, some would say only, from the players that played in the recently completed tri-series tournament against South Africa and India. But the following people have been dropped: Britney Cooper, dropped; Shanika Bruce, dropped; Shanita Grimond, dropped; and Kaisia Schultz, dropped. Acacia Schultz. Why did I say Kaisia? Acacia Schultz has been dropped. Those are the 4 players that have been dropped, in essence, from the tri-series team. The players that have been drafted in who did not take place, who did not play in that tri-series are as follows: Zaida James, Trishan Holder, Janaba Joseph, and effectively Stafanie Taylor. We'll come to Stefani in a minute because we already know the deal with Stefani. Stefani is one of our 3 GOATs of the West Indies women's game. So I feel like we don't need to go into any big monologue about Stefani, but there is an issue to talk about where Stefani is concerned, but I'll leave that for 1 second. The first thing that people have to understand or question or query or talk about is it the right move to pick effectively the 3 best under-19 players from the recently completed under-19 Women's World Cup, where we got to the Super 6 stage? Was it the right thing to pick the 3 best, or what Courtney Walsh and Anne Brown believed to be I'm speaking for them, believed to be the 3 standout players from the under-19 side? And that is Zaida James, who effectively was our best performer in the under-19 World Cup, Janaba Joseph, and Trishan Holder. Now, it's worth noting that both Janaba Joseph and Trishan Holder have previously played for the West Indies women's senior side already. Zaida just made her debut in the last of the tri-series games where we lost against, I think, India. They called up like Janila Glasgow as well, Trishan, Janaba, and Zaida, because we had lots of injuries, and they all played that last tri-series game. So the question I put to people listening to this is, do you think that's the right thing to do? Do you think it makes more sense to put 3 under-19 players into the senior side and drop the experience of a Britney Cooper, when I say experience, I mean senior experience, of a Britney Cooper, of a Shanika Bruce, of a Shanita Grimond, of a Kaisia Schultz? Does it make sense what they've done? Now, me personally, I've got no issue with it. If you go and watch my previous video on the women's team, I said that no matter what happened in this World Cup, it should serve as a watershed moment for the West Indies women's team, and that I expected that after this World Cup, the next thing that would happen is that we would start to see Courtney Walsh and Anne Brown decide to kind of jettison a lot of the senior players and start to bring through the kind of the next rung of talent in the region. That next rung of talent, like a James, like a Joseph, like Trishan Holder, would also benefit from going directly into the West Indies Women's Academy, where they effectively would be in Antigua, where they would effectively be exposed to a professional setup for the next year, whilst also being drafted into the West Indies women's side. So for me, there's no big issue here. I expected those three and maybe a few others to get their chance straight after the World Cup and be like a key staple of the women's side going forward. So is it any great skin off my back to include them at the World Cup? No, not really. I think it's great experience. They're going to be the backbone of the squad at the next few World Cups coming. A lot of the next World Cups coming up over the next decade. So why not get them involved? Does it mean that Zaida James will definitely play? I actually think she will, but not necessarily. Does it mean Janaba Joseph will definitely play? Does it mean Trishan Holt will definitely play? Not necessarily, but if they do, I've got no issue with that. If you've got someone like Zaida James who, quote unquote, dominated or certainly held her hand up in the Under-19 World Cup, why should she not get that senior experience? If you've got Janaba Joseph, in fact, let me just get this straight because I'm about to say something about Janaba. I think Janaba hit that good innings right at the end of the World Cup. Was it in the game against England? I want to say, sorry, people, bear with me. I want to say Janaba hit 40 odd. Was it Janaba? Have I just made that up? Yeah, it was. Yeah, Janaba. In the last game against England, Janaba Joseph, when we only made 84 off our 20 overs, made 44 of 42 balls. So, and England obviously were the World Cup runners-up in the Under-19 World Cup. So, I can't hate the decision to say, you know what, you're a talented youngster, come along for the ride in the World Cup. Will she play? I don't know, but she's held her hand up at the Under-19 level. I do not believe for someone like the West Indies women that the gap between the best Under-19 players and I don't want to say the worst senior players. I basically don't think the gap between the best Under-19 players and our senior squad is that big. So I have no issue with saying, let's blood the youth from now. Trishan Holder's already played for the senior side in the England series earlier in the year. That was earlier in the year. End of last year that was in the Caribbean. So again, I can't really hate on that decision. Plenty of you watching this video, and maybe plenty in the Caribbean, have probably had a few words to say about it. Probably there's been a cuss out about somebody like Casey Schultz missing out for Zaida James, given that they offer the same suit. Arguably, some would say that Zaida James is a better batter than Casey Schultz, which is why she's lost a particular position because they both offer left arm orthodox. So that may be why Zaida James has got the nod, given her form as well from the Under-19 World Cup. And also, I guess, in that last game against India, when they drafted the Under-19s in, Zaida made 21 out of 31 balls. So I think they've gone for the youth and the potential that someone like Zaida offers. So that's really talking point one. And as usual, if you're watching this on YouTube, get in the comments below. Do you believe they've done the right thing? Do you think it's the best thing to do for the long term of West Indies cricket that we blood some of these Under-19 girls in this tournament from now? You also have to remember, by the way, that we're very unlikely to make it out of the group. Remember our group, if I just go back and look at it, our group for the World Cup, which I've now lost, is England, India, Ireland, Pakistan. Our first two games are England and India. So my whole thing is we're probably out of the tournament inside our first two games. And then we play Ireland, then we play Pakistan. So my thing is we're probably going to be out after two games anyway. So by the time we play Ireland and Pakistan, yeah, give the youngsters a try. Let them experience the senior World Cup as well. So I can't hate on it. We're not one of the favourites. We're not even one of the dark horses. We're just there. Anything we do at this tournament looks like a bonus. Anytime of games we win just looks like a bonus at this stage because the gap is so huge between us and England and India, who would be seen as the top two ranked sides within our group. And remember, only the top two go through. So again, in that context, can't hate on the decision to blood the youth from now and give them some senior World Cup experience. Away from that, I guess the only real other talking point for me is Stafanie Taylor. Let's get this right. Essentially, the West Indies are taking a huge gamble with Stafanie here. Stafanie, as I understand it, has been in Johannesburg getting treatment on her back. She did not play in the tri-series against South Africa and India, essentially because the West Indies have been hoping that her getting treatment in Johannesburg would get her, I don't want to say match fit because it's not match fit. She's not playing any matches. Would get her physically fit to take part in the tournament. The press release from the selectors said that Stafanie Taylor has been named in the squad subject to a final fitness assessment. So what will be interesting to me is this. Stefanie's in there and I hope she's fit. I hope she can't be match fit, but I hope she's fit because Stafanie Taylor at even 75% of her peak is probably the second best player in the side. At her peak, she's the best player in the side. She's better than Hayley Matthews if she's at her peak. At 75%, Stafanie Taylor's still the second best player in the side. So if they feel they can get Stafanie ready, that significantly boosts the side, even without her having much match fitness behind her. It's a huge risk, but I get it. I understand why you'd want to take somebody with that amount of experience and that top level ability into the World Cup squad. We're already shy of Deandra Dottin. We can't be shy of Stafanie as well. So I get the gamble. However, should Stafanie not pass the final fitness assessment subject to the start of the tournament, I am intrigued to know what their backup plan is. And of course, if Stafanie doesn't pass the final fitness test, I'm fairly certain some people will cuss and say, if you knew, they'll say something to the effect of, you knew she wasn't going to be ready. You called her into the World Cup squad anyway. What were you doing? If you knew it was 50-50, why didn't you pick someone else so that they were already ready to know their role for this particular World Cup? So a cuss out is probably coming if Stafanie doesn't pass fit for the tournament. But I guess I'm saying, and my take is, I totally understand the gamble and why you would go with it, because she makes our team significantly stronger if, and it's a big if, she is ready. So that for me, that's the second and probably the last big talking point about this World Cup squad. In fact, that's a lie. The final talking point, and I put this one out to the people watching. When I looked at the squad, I said to myself, right, let me construct the likely first 11 for the first World Cup game against, I think England's up first, against England in Boland Park in Pal, next Monday, the 13th of February. Okay. I said, what's our team? What's our team going to be? And I can't tell you yet. Because the youngsters have got in, because Zaida's got in, because Janaba's got in, because Trishan's got in, I don't know now what our team is. I don't know how many of those youngsters go straight into the side. I expect Zaida James to play, but I can't. In the last Tri-Series game against India, I think Zaida came in at number 7. Now, bear in mind, for the West Indies under-19, let me just remind myself, for the West Indies under-19, Zaida opened. Now, obviously, there is a gap between under-19 cricket and senior cricket. Zaida is unlikely, you would think, to open for the West Indies senior side. But that's what she was doing for the West Indies under-19 side in the World Cup. In fact, where is it? For example, in the game we won against Indonesia, and I know Indonesia one of the weaker sides, but she opened with Chanel Sao and made 55 of 37 balls. So Zaida set the tone in the under-19 side. She's not going to open for the senior side. So I can't really tell you what our team is. I'm going to do some thinking on it over the next few days. But I guess I set the challenge to those of you watching or listening to this. With 11 days to go till our World Cup opener, what's your starting 11? And when I say what's your starting 11, I mean in order. So many conundrums to think about. If Stefanie's fit, where's she playing? If she's not fit, who's in the side? Does Rashada Williams open? Does she not? Where's the best place to put Hayley Matthews? Does that depend on Stafanie Taylor's fitness? So there's a whole heap of things. To consider. So I put the challenge out to you. You lot probably watching this going, Mash, you're supposed to tell us. No, I put the challenge out to you lot. You see the 11 on the screen? Hayley Matthews. I'll read the squad again. Hayley Matthews, Shemaine Campbell, Aaliyah Alain, Shamila Connell, Afi Fletcher, Shabika Gejnabi, Chanel Henry, Trishan Holder, Zaida James, Janaba Joseph, Shadeen Nation, Karishma Ramarak, Shakira Selman, Stafanie Taylor, Rashada Williams. What's your final 11, people? I've been Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. That's another episode for you to contemplate and chew over, and get in the comments below or at us at Carib Cricket. Let me know what you think. And as ever, like, share, and subscribe to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.